Good afternoon, everybody. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers and Dr. Balaji Navale for giving me this opportunity to share a few thoughts about my book. And I would also like a special mention to Dr. Sri Hari and Dr. Arvind Mishra because they've been constantly motivating all of us to do more and more. With that, I will give you a brief introduction about my recently published science fiction novel, 1319 AD. Being an obstetrician and delivering babies always, the one analogy that comes to my mind is, especially when you are asking a writer to introduce their book, it's like asking a new mother to show off their baby. So I've seen so many mothers coming proudly and showing off their babies. And so thank you everyone for letting me show off my baby. So this general preview of 1319 AD is the Kannada science fiction novel, and it's my third Kannada novel and the first novel to be published in three formats. I should really be thankful to the publisher Smilang. They are a group of techies who aim to promote local language literature as well as leadership. So they picked up my book and they have published it in three formats, that is a paperback, which is 243 pages, then an ebook as well as an audio book, which has been brilliantly presented by Mr. Sachin Nayak, who is an architect by profession. Though I signed the contract in 2019, and that is the reason why this book is named as 3019, that is 1,000 years from now. Then because of the COVID, I asked the publishers whether we would change it to 3020, and they said, no, we'll keep it at that. So ultimately it got released in an online function on the 7th of March, 2021. As the book suggests, 1319 AD is about what life might be 1,000 years from now. So it's the situation, the geopolitical setting is there is an interplanetary as well as an intercosmic competition for supremacy. The Earth and also its leaders are actually focused on making the Earth a front runner in the galactic race for superiority. So it's the various countries of the earth have now united together, and there is one government, federal government, that is ruling the earth. And therefore, the laws apply to everybody. So just because there is one government completely doesn't mean that the people are one. As history has always shown us, there exists division amongst humans despite the earth being one. And though the earth is trying to put up a show of solidarity, there is always an interracial, I wouldn't say racial, there is some sort of friction amongst the civilians. So this is the geopolitical setting. And coming to the social structure, is it going to be the same? I said some differences do exist. So what are the kind of differences that exist? Because this book is somewhere 1,000 years from now, I needed a lot of explanation to do in the first few pages about all this before actually going into the story. So I'm just trying to put each one of them in one slide. So there is the existence of superhumans. See, I think from the time we have evolved from the cave, the nomads, and the hunter gatherers, we have evolved now. And now is the time in history that we have to evolve further, that too with the help of technology. So here we are trying to evolve ourselves with various faculties that science can give us. So, and then now there is the federal government, which is also encouraging people to do more and more, to be more capable because they are fighting an intergalactic and an interplanetary war. So to be in the forefront, so Earth wants all its human beings to be the best and nothing else. So this is encouraging people to always better themselves and to be and to evolve as superhumans. So ultimately, over a period of 200 or 150 years, people start aiming to be superhumans. And what are the kind of superhumans that can that can come into being in future? I must make a confession here. Though I have said that it is 1,000 years from now, as a doctor, coming from a medical background and being and seeing the infertility practices, seeing the artificial reproductive practices, seeing how much strides we have made in genetics, I believe that maybe the same story can be said even 500 years from now. It need not be 1,000 years for all these genetic changes to take place in future. So what are the kind of superhumans that evolve? One is the designers or made to order beings. So that is, you want your hair color to be golden, you want to be intelligent, you want to resist some kind of a disease, you want to look like a Greek god or a goddess. So all that is quite possible by tweaking the genes in the embryonic stage itself. So there are designer beings, and they are the best in whatever they want to do. If somebody wants to be very intelligent, all you need to do is to tweak their chromosome number 2 and chromosome number 6, and then the intelligent gene gets tweaked. Similarly, there are clones. Now, the concept of cloning, I don't want to go into the mythology because there are enough number of clones in Hindu mythology, is that you can create an exactly similar human being as you by just a single cell from your body. Even a skin cell is sufficient. So it does not need a sperm and also an egg to create a human being. Then the third superhumans are the chimeras. It's CHIMERA is pronounced as chimera. And this is an interspecies organism. That is, the genes of one species can be put into the genes of the other species, and you get a chimera. And finally, the cyborgs. I think, can somebody mute themselves, please? And finally, we have the cyborgs. Admin, please mute others, please. And finally, there are the cyborgs, which you are all very aware. That is the cyber organism when the human beings have some electronically implanted chip or something either into their brain or into their nervous system. And despite all this, finally, as always in history, there is the orthodox school. That is the normal human beings who just don't want to do any of this. They don't want to tweak their genes. They don't want to increase their capacity by using the computer chips. So they're all ridiculed as yokels, and they're treated as incompetent, and even the federal government thinks that they are a liability to the earth because they're not contributing, they're not at their best, they are with their own genes, they have the same human fallacies. So this is the fifth category of human beings. And in Kannada, I have used the word called Gampuru because we all, as children, we have heard about the story of Gampuru, that is the stupid people. So this group of orthodox human beings are called the Gampuru. So the genetically, as I told you, genetically modified are the designers, where everything can be changed. And the chimeras, see, for example, how do you do a chimera? There is a particular gene that is for echolocation of the bats, and that is called the Prestin gene. So if we were to incorporate the Prestin gene into a human being, then we would be able to echolocate, meaning we can act like an ultrasound machine, like a submarine, whatever concept is used in the submarine, or seeing things in the dark. So all these, they are just, even in 19 AD, this concept is a little too much, and they're just beginning to discover the chimera since the last 5 or 6 decades. And then I will also be telling you about tardigrades later. You might have heard that the tardigrades are those organisms on Earth which can bear any kind of radiation 10,000 times more than the human beings. So just imagine, so if you had a tardigrade gene into the human gene, then we would be able to resist radiation. And what does resisting radiation 1,000 years from now mean? It means we can work in space without space suits. So such things, so people go on thinking, okay, what can we now put into the human gene, because now they have mastered the mechanism of changing the human gene. And finally, the clones. maybe the designers and the chimeras are a far-fetched concept right now in 2021, but clones, we know about cloning, and Dolly was the first sheep to be cloned way back in 1998. So the similar concept can be applied to humans, and we can clone ourselves. But however, now for ethical reason, cloning is definite of humans is being banned. So it appears that all these superhumans have redefined Darwin's theory of survival of fittest. When Darwin said survival of fittest, he meant those who could adapt themselves. But here, the survival of fittest means those who can be superhumans, and sort of an artificial evolution has been reached 1,000 years from now. And cyborgs, you all know, it is cyber organism where they can enhance their memory, mix faculties like they can hear music, taste color, and very importantly cyber surveillance, defense, intergalactic cyber activity, all these things. And they give a strong competition to aliens because they have varied sensory capacities. And even currently, cyborgs are not science fiction anymore, because Neil Harbison is an existing cyborg, and he has been recognized officially by his country as a cyborg. Now, I just want to show two videos. If you're thinking that my imagination about designer babies, chimeras, and clones is too far-fetched, I just want to show two videos that I took in the infertility laboratory in UK. This first video is about how we fuse the sperm and also the egg in the laboratory. The egg is on the left side, and the pipette holding the sperm is on the right side. So after this, what we do in test tube babies is, when once the egg and sperm are fused outside the body, it is allowed to grow outside the body for about 2 or 3 days. So in the 2 3 days, it reaches an 8 cell stage. So when we are doing the genetic manipulation, we have to, all we need to do is take one cell from the 8 cell stage, change its genes how we want, and put that cell back. And then afterwards, on maybe on the third or fourth or fifth day, we put the embryo back into the mother's womb. So this is whole concept of the test tube baby, which we are doing right now without the genetic manipulation. Though we do genetic manipulation to study the genes for some particular diseases, we don't know how to change the genes right now, but we know how to study those genes. So just to break the monotony of this story, I thought I'll just show these videos. This is the first video that is showing the how we fuse the sperm to the egg in the in vitro fertilization technique. This is in the artificial reproductive technique laboratory. The pipette is piercing the egg now. The sperm is within the pipette. That is the sperm coming in. Yes. Yeah, trust me, each time I see this video, I get so excited that science is able to do these things. And now the next video that I'll be showing you is, we have something called an embryoscope, where we go on seeing how these cells are dividing when once the fertilization happens. And this is a time-lapse video of the embryoscope showing how the cell divides from two half cells, one egg and one sperm, into the 8 cell and also the 16 cell stage, where we can do the genetic manipulations. Sorry. I wanted this one. Yeah. Yeah. So at the 8 cell stage, you take out one cell and do the genetic manipulation. Now, another concept that I've introduced in this 1319 is the conquest of death. Thanatology is the study of death. And so the scientists who are studying death sort of succeed in extracting the life vitality. See, for just to put it very concisely, death means the loss of that vitality which was there when the human being was alive. So if we had a mechanism where we could just extract that vitality, then probably we could create death. So when this concept, I will not go into the details of how they do it, though I have substantiated it with some things like dark matter and dark energy. Anyway, so the federal government suddenly becomes excited. Look here, now we knew how to make babies. Now, if we are able to make a person die when they want, probably, and then tell them that you can design yourself for your next birth. You store that life vitality, put back the life vitality in the designer baby which this person has designed for himself, and the same person with the same life vitality will be born with a different body that he needs. So this concept also have introduced in this. So this concept of recycling a new physic with old life vitality, that is mooted, and I think most of you are familiar because it goes back to our concept of atma and rebirth. Anyway, this is the one of the other features. So the person chooses to die, and then the same vitality is put back. So I've named this bill as the liver bill, that is the life vitality extraction and recycle. So the government is just waiting to pass this liver bill, and that is when all the action happens. So the storyline is about a protagonist, Dr. Amartya Adipanti. So I have also tried to, somebody was talking about names. So I've specifically searched for names, especially the surnames. And I've put it in such a way that the yokels have surnames like Adipanti, meaning I'm the original owner and things like that. Whereas the designers have more grandiose names like emperors, suggesting Samrat and emperor and all that. That's besides. So the protagonist is Amartya Adipanti, who is a yokel, and the external conflict is every day, though he's a brilliant person, has to contend with being treated as a second-class citizen because he's from the Orthodox school. And then the internal conflict is he's newly married, he's about 32, 33-year-old, he wants to have a baby. But if the liver bill is going to get introduced in the next 3-4 weeks, then he has to have a designer baby only and cannot procreate naturally. So the resolution of both these conflicts, the drama is the drama of science fiction, 1980. What is the calamity that hits the earth suddenly? And very uncannily, the kind of emergency that I have brought into this story is I was is something similar to the COVID pandemic that happens. So, but I will not let out what's the kind of pandemic that happens, and especially to what group of people. So, this can the normally evolved human beings or the yokels outdo the superhumans during the time of distress? And does the liver bill get passed? And finally, is Amartya Adipanti a hero or villain? So my story contains all these, and some of the story insights, like I told you, this tragic story of Devahuti Adipanti. See, this is a person, I told you, the federal government wants only very superhumans. So if somebody is born disabled, differently abled, the government wants to use them in some way or the other. So they convert this poor girl who is blind into a tardigrade and make her work in space. And finally, they bring her back after 10-12 years because now she herself has become radiation emitting body, and they have to kill her for that. So some stories like this. And then I was thinking about nomenclature of humans. If there are any of biology students around, we humans are known as Homo sapiens sapiens. So if they are designers, and this is the thought that is put by yokels. See, there is a fight for owning the earth, saying that the earth belongs to us because we are evolved naturally. So they want the designers to be named as Homo sapiens configurare because they are configured, or say clones as Homo sapiens contraparte because there is an identical twin, and the cyborgs as Homo sapiens contrivancy. I just wanted to highlight, because as I went on writing the story, and also my computer crashed 3 times when I wrote the story, so I had to rewrite the story, and each time I rewrote the story there was some other thought coming in, and that made it 243 pages, I guess. And I think with this, I'll come to the end of, I'm just going to show you one more video that MyLang Publishers made for promoting my book with the voiceover of Mr. Sachin Nayak. So I edited it and put some English subtitles, and I wish to close my talk with this final video. Thank you all very much for a patient hearing. Thank you.